Alright, we're back. Mock Draft 2.0, our first of the season went swimmingly, so we're back with our second to somehow try and infuriate 14 different NBA fan bases at once. For this mock, I ran a tankathon spin, and it ended up pretty wild with Memphis jumping 6 spots to win the lottery, Charlotte climbing 1 spot, and of course the Pistons ending up being the big losers on the day. As always, this mock draft is me putting myself in these teams' shoes, inciting discussion, offering different perspectives, and helping to familiarize people watching with some potential lottery picks and fits. Let's jump into it. First overall, we have the Memphis Grizzlies jumping 6 spots to nab the top pick. The Grizzlies are in a pretty interesting situation, losing 55 games largely due to the injuries of Ja Morant, Marcus Smart, Desmond Bane at times, and more. But they'll be bringing those guys back next year along with Jaren Jackson Jr. and some newly found youngsters, so they should be really competitive. As for who they'd take first overall, you'd have to think it would be someone who could contribute immediately but has some upside too. I think Ron Holland fits that bill at the forward position. I considered a few others here, Alex Sarr, Matas Buzelis, even Reed Shepherd, but I think Holland's immediate infusion of athleticism, defense, transition offense, motor, could do wonders for the Grizzlies both next year and for the future. There are shooting and turnover concerns with Holland, but A, I personally think he's going to be a fine shooter, and B, both of those things are mitigated by Memphis having a good front court of Morant and Bane. I like this fit, and I think Ron Holland would help the Grizzlies as soon as next year. Just 1 year into their rebuild, Washington currently has the luxury of being able to draft pretty much anything. They can gamble on lead ball handlers, swing on high upside wings, or even just draft elite role players who can help fill the cracks of their roster for the foreseeable future. In this mock, I have them drafting one of their likelier options at number 2, Alex Sarr of Perth in the NBL. Sarr fits the mold of a few versatile 7-footers to pass through the ranks in the last few drafts, Evan Mobley, Chet Holmgren, etc. I personally think he's easily the worst of that bunch, but there's little doubt that he fits that part with the ability to block shots at a high level, handle the ball sparingly, and even extend out beyond the arc. With the Wizards, Sarr would have the opportunity to hone things he's already good at, but would also have a few years of leash developing things like handle, shooting, maybe even some playmaking. There's a slim chance he ends up being a franchise player, but kicking off your rebuild with Alex Sarr and Bilal Coulibaly as two-way forces is a pretty good start. Third, I have Charlotte taking a gamble on Stephon Castle of the national champion UConn Huskies. This is a bit rich for my taste, but Castle as a 6'6" guard wing hybrid does bring a lot to the table in terms of size, defense, a downhill attack, and some improvable ball handling and shot making. There's shooting concerns, just 27% from 3 in his lone season as a Husky, and I think there's some pretty fair questions about his role too, but I see the vision with him in Charlotte as a combo guard alongside LaMelo Ball. He wouldn't necessarily need to shoot at a high clip with his backcourt partner being one of the best long-range shooters in the league, and he could focus on rim pressure, point of attack defense, and more while honing the things like shooting and secondary playmaking for the long term. Even more, this would eventually give the Hornets a chance to roll out a starting lineup of 6'6" plus across the board. Fourth overall, we've got the Portland Trailblazers taking a gamble on Matas Buzelis of the G League Ignite. After an underwhelming year on a few fronts, Portland is still very much searching for their franchise guy. And just a year or so into their rebuild with no real end in sight just yet, I say swing for the fences with one of a few prospects who I could really see blossoming into a star. I believe Scoot Henderson's going to be fine. You've got shooting guard options to choose from, and front court pieces at least in the short term. Buzelis theoretically fills that jumbo wing slot nicely. He's got plenty of work to do in order to reach his full potential, but I think Portland's a nice situation in the fact they can give him some offensive opportunity without completely throwing him into the fire too. He can work on tightening up the screws in simpler areas like off-ball scoring, defense, passing, and let the things like shot making, playmaking, and more come to him with time. At 5, we've got a pretty funky pick, but one I really like and hope to sell people on, Reed Shepherd of Kentucky to the Pistons. This would theoretically make the 3rd straight year Detroit has fallen to number 5. At this point, I'm sure they're nearly expecting it. This year wouldn't quite be the death blow of drafts past, but you'd still rather select in that top 3. With Reed Shepherd, you get an immediate infusion of 3-point shooting, as well as defensive and overall playmaking, all things I would argue Detroit desperately needs. At first glance, an undersized combo guard is likely not what jumps off the page to Pistons fans, but I'd argue his fit alongside Cunningham as a white-hot shooter and player that can handle secondary playmaking duties is a great one. Azar Thompson is long and fills the role of point-of-attack defender well. Cunningham's 6'6", so there's a world out there where Shepherd isn't guarding up positions too often, even if he's playing, air quotes, the shooting guard. I think Shepherd's a great fit here. He's a floor raiser, and one Detroit should really consider if they miss out on some of the better upside swings. Easy fit, easy pick here at number 6, Nikola Topic of the EuroLeague to San Antonio. The Spurs are in the market for a long-term point guard to handle a good chunk of the on-ball operations, and Topic as a paint-touching, table-setting guard should work remarkably next to Victor Wembanyama. At a reported but unconfirmed 6'6" with a 7-foot wingspan, Topic typically gets his by attacking the paint with good finishing and creative passing that was all on display in the Adriatic League. Over 18 points and 7 assists per game there. There's few better combinations in theory that work better with 7'4" Wembanyama. Topic doesn't yet have a consistent jumper or defense, but he does show signs of eventually having those things in his toolbox, all things that would likely work themselves out with time alongside an eventual NBA great. 7th, we again have the Spurs picking, this time via the Toronto pick acquired in the Jakob Poeltl trade, which as an aside would be DEFCON 1 for the 57-loss Raptors. Here, though, we have San Antonio swinging on 6'9" forward Zachary Rizachet, who as of now projects to be a 3-and-D wing with room to grow, despite not really being elite on either of those fronts just yet. I do see the vision with Rizachet. He's long, he can really guard, and shows feel on the offensive end. His last few months just haven't necessarily been kind to him. Based off some of his late cycle tape, I'm skeptical Rizachet can hit his ceiling, but a 6'9" sharpshooter who can play great defense at the point of attack and off ball, as well as create and playmake at a mid-tier level, is just so scary next to Victor Wembanyama. At number 8, we have the ever-mysterious Utah Jazz swinging on one of the high-ceiling forwards that this draft has to offer, Cody Williams of Colorado. I've said it 1,000 times, I'll say it again, I have no idea where Utah goes from here, aside from adding young talent to their group in hopes of it panning out, and that's exactly what I've done here with Cody Williams. At 6'9" with good athleticism, transition play, and defense, Williams makes sense in a vacated wing role alongside Markkanen, Sexton, George, Kessler, and whoever else. You can see the beginning stages of a point forward in Williams' game, which sparingly mirror his brother in OKC, and a player that size who could handle, pass, and more would do wonders for a team that has a bit of an identity crisis currently. Even if Williams remains in his median, you're still getting some good connective traits for the holes in your roster. 9th, we have the Houston Rockets using the Nets pick and taking Rob Dillingham, the other Kentucky backcourt member likely to go in the top 10. The Rockets have talent in their front court, at the wing, in their backcourt, so rather than choosing to address a specific position group, I've gone with a few needs, such as 3-point shooting and another savvy ball handler in Dillingham. Houston finished 23 out of 30 as a team in 3-point shooting this season, and between their star Şengün not seeing a ton of volume there, and last year's top pick Amen Thompson being a bad shooter, it feels addressable with Dillingham, who shot 44% on 4.5 attempts per game. Even better, Dillingham is toggleable between point and shooting guard. The Rockets of course have good guards in Fred VanVleet, Jalen Green, and Thompson, but Dillingham can really mix and match with all of those guys, and he offers what I think will be a really good shot maker and playmaker alongside Şengün. It fills a need, gets you a stud, and a potential long-term guard once VanVleet's contract is up. Houston, we have a solution. Donovan Clingan is finally off the board to the Hawks at number 10. There's rumblings this is going to be a big offseason for the Hawks with near everyone on the table, but for now I'm going to draft with their current roster in mind. Clingan at 7'2" is a traditional center that helped lead UConn to back-to-back titles as a pivotal piece. Of course, his impact is going to be made more by collegiate rules, like any big, but he does boast pretty atypical mobility for a guy of his stature. He's not speedy, of course, but he is just gargantuan and can close space quickly on defense, rim run with some pace, and more. Similar to the Yves Missi pick in my last mock video, Clingan offers a frontcourt piece to Atlanta that allows them to move off of Capella and rearrange their roster around Trae Young, or even just a backup center that scales alongside their star too. I think big changes are likely needed in ATL, but even if that surfaces next season, starting your rebuild off with Clingan, who I think can add more to his game, isn't the worst option. Another team who desperately needs to press the reset button, perhaps more than any other team in the league, is the Chicago Bulls, who are selecting number 11 here and taking a big swing on volatile point guard USC's Isaiah Collier. The Bulls' stars are aging or don't hold exceptional value league-wide, they don't outright own their picks next season, their players aren't winning and meshing at the pace they'd hoped. The situation is fairly dire. With the Collier pick, they're at least choosing a side, leaning into youth and attempting to develop a young point guard next to a hopeful roster mainstay in Kobe White. I understand White has been the point guard most of the season, but I really think he'd thrive in that combo guard role with his scoring and shooting prowess. The NBA thrives with multiple ball handlers anyway. Collier was highly touted out of high school and had a tough season at USC, but there's still a pretty decent chance he ends up one of, if not the best point guard in this class. He's got a ton of flash to his game. His shooting splits were solid relative to what people thought they would be. It feels like we as draft junkies are giving the benefit of the doubt for injuries and bad situations to a few other prospects, but not Collier. 12th overall, we've got Oklahoma City selecting via the Houston Rockets first rounder, and I've got them taking a shot on Jared McCain, the Duke one and done who surprised in his lone season with the Blue Devils. It was uncertain coming into the season whether McCain would even earn the starting job. He did, and proceeded to get better and better as the season progressed, scoring 14.3 points per game while cashing in on over 40% of his near 6 threes attempted per game. McCain somewhat fits the mold OKC looks for in terms of bringing something to a variety of areas. He's a shooter, above average rebounder for both his size and position at 5 a game. He's a fully capable handler and passer. He's usable as both a point and shooting guard offensively. His only real qualm in terms of fit with OKC would be defense, which the Thunder feel pretty well covered in at the moment. And just as an added bonus, McCain seems like a really fun locker room fit with one of the youngest teams in the league. At number 13, we have the recently eliminated Sacramento Kings taking Tennessee sharpshooter Dalton Knecht. I still really believe the Kings could stand to add a more versatile frontcourt piece, a la taking Filipowski in my last mock, but going a different direction, I think another lengthy shooting guard / forward hybrid would also work on this team. Knecht was one of the best scorers in college basketball this season, averaging 21.7 points per game, with a decent chunk of that off ball, spotting up, coming off screens, and more. With the Kings, he'd largely be doing the same, playing off of De'Aaron Fox and Domantas Sabonis as a scorer, and creating his own shots in moderation. The tandem of both him and Keegan Murray as lengthy sharpshooters that you could stagger or play together would make for some really fun lineups in Sacramento. Rounding out the lottery and the video is the Portland Trailblazers selecting via the Golden State Warriors pick and grabbing French wing Tejan Salon of Cloette in the LMB Pro A League. At 6'9", Salon is a toolsy wing that would be worth taking a shot on if you're a team like Portland who's in this developmental phase. He's putting up respectable numbers in a great league, shooting the ball decently, and he's got some handler upside at 6'9". Salon is certainly a project. There's likely no way he'd be NBA ready from the jump, and especially wouldn't be impact ready, but I like Portland covering their bases here and maximizing their chances at landing a versatile wing who in the least could maybe project to shoot threes and use his length elsewhere.